Hey everybody. I was thinking about what I was talking about yesterday about how we are the culmination of the five people that we are closest to in our lives, and how that doesn't really feel like it applies to me because it can't, because I don't have five close people like that. And it kind of just makes me think like what's the point of life, and not like I'm pondering like, oh, what does it all mean, but like I'm pondering what it means, if that like even makes sense. I'm like, what does it mean that I don't have friends right now? And even like one of my friends that I mentioned, like, it's not like I don't have friends, but we don't speak, and we don't speak with like regularity at all. A few times a year, just really more informal. And the friend that I speak to the most is through text. And it's like I can feel that we wouldn't be friends necessarily today if we hadn't been friends in the past, because we're so different with outlooks, and not in a way that complements or butts heads necessarily. It's just like um you know we just kind of irk each other, because everything he like is really interested in, I think is um pretty uninteresting. And I kind of don't want to hear about it, and I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, no, that movie sucks, no, this cause is like pointless. And at the same time, he's like, wow, what's happened to you? It's like, he sees me with like this concerned, apathy or whatever. And, maybe that's just the way, like, maybe we should change from like when we're in high school. Maybe it's not a compliment to be like, wow, you haven't changed a lick, like in any way, shape, or form since you were a teenager. And maybe that's just like part of growing. And like I was saying the other night, maybe I had to like go through these court cases, custody, and um a divorce, like a really painful separation, that I really, it's one thing if you have like this stupid, just kind of on a whim and a dare, like under the influence, like crazy ass wedding, which was like with my ex-husband. We were just addicts, and we just did it to have something to like do, kind of, in a way. It was deeper than that, but you know what I mean. It wasn't like thought out, like, wow, I'm going to be with this person forever, because there was no forever. With addiction and mental illness, you become a prisoner to the present. There's no future. It's just now, and it's on a loop, and it's like a hamster loop. And so, it wasn't like I was thinking about growing old with this person. I wasn't thinking. And so to have that crumble, and to be like, wow, forever until death do us part, an eternity, life as I knew it, ended up being on a short clock of 7 years, and it's like a neck break to go from like, wow, if I live to be my 80s, I'm going to be with this person. And it makes so much sense. And there's this real, yin and yang and compatibility to, this is unacceptable, these are boundaries and a level of self-respect that I have for myself, that it's not like I didn't have it before, but I didn't think I would need to implement these boundaries. I hadn't even factored them into something, I literally hadn't been able to fathom having to say, no, like, that's unacceptable. I've come too far to settle for this bullshit. And so, all of these things are crumbling down, and it's taken a toll, because with anything matters of the heart, certainly like anything through the courts, it's oftentimes very very stressful and long and drawn out and just like ridiculous, and nobody seems to have an iota of sense. And I can feel, this is what I'm telling myself that I'm trying to focus on, and kind of the reason I wanted to say this. Like I said, if like nobody watches this, but maybe like one person in freaking, whatever, wherever, is like, wow, I feel rather alone, and kind of like, it's Groundhog Day, but it's not, you know, just so like, why? What I'm really trying to focus on is that why. I guess that's what I was saying. Like, why is life the way it is? Um, Trying to focus on that why. That it's coming. Things take as long as they take, and realizations take as long as they do. It took me 13 years before I could get sober. It took me 9 months to really be like, okay, that's unacceptable, to complete, true sobriety. It took me, the better part of the past year, from like last January to present, the majority of that time, to be like, wow, I cannot continue in a relationship um, where I deserve more. And that's okay to say. Um, in fact, I think maybe that's the whole point of all of it, is like life is just like the duration, the of moments, like the duration of time between like one, epiphany to another. And the epiphany is like your worth, and defining your value and who you are, and what you will accept, what you will not accept, where you are limited, where you are not limited, what you believe in. And that was the missing point that made life just feel very like, empty. And like I didn't fit, because I had no idea that the degree to which I had no idea who I was, and didn't know myself. I knew I hated myself, but when you're like, when you can't see the forest through the trees, it's like, what the fuck's a tree? Um, and so that missing piece really, with that drove so much of my personality and everything, the drugs, the political standpoints, the religious standpoints, which in my case was like a lack of a religious affiliation. The political standpoints, like I said, the codependency, like this frenzied need to have like manic, almost like sickly love. I didn't want stability. I wanted like the frenzy, like this rabid, ravenous love. And that is love. People are like, oh, well, that's not real. You can't love someone until you can love yourself. You can't really love till you can love yourself. And yeah, that's true. On one point of view, you can't have the love that we are all ideally wanting until you love yourself, because that is where it starts. But there are different types of love. And um, you know mental illness, and like all these, I don't know, like codependency, love addiction, a personality disorder, or three, or whatever, throw like a clouded mind state, and like a tattered, clouded heart into the mix. And you're looking at life through that lens, that clouded, tattered, wounded, confused lens, where you're all of a sudden, everything you seek is like I said, like a rebuttal to stuff. And it was kind of a rebuttal to emptiness that I could not even fathom like having. The emptiness of course, being a relationship, and self-acceptance and self-love, with myself. Um, but it's still like, even when it's bad love, it's like it's like a meal with a bunch of chemicals. Some of the tastiest food is the most like chock full of just straight up trash, as we're finding out. Like, it's still food, it's still edible, it's still a meal, but it's not, wagyu beef or whatever. Wagyu. That's like on my bucket list of things I would like to try. it's not like a delicious meal. It's not without its poisons and its additives and its fillers and all its bullshit. But damn, it sure is tasty. And when you don't love yourself or know yourself, it's like you're not just like hungry for that. You're like starving for it. And it was love for me, but it was also like a God, something bigger than me. Like they say in NA and AA, you have to have some belief in something bigger than yourself. And I had a real aversion to that because it's so based in like kind of like a Christian model, even though it says it isn't. It feels like it is. But really, that belief can truly be yourself and your goals, where I'm going, who I want to be, defining those parameters of like, this is not acceptable. This is who I am. No, this is actually like where I'm going, making those decisions for myself. And then all of a sudden, like these poison foods and chemicals and just like settling doesn't seem so appealing. And, all of this stuff crumbling down, it all takes as long as it takes. And it can't take any sooner. So I'm trying to really keep that in mind, that is a really common concern, like the passage of time and how long it's taken for everything. But it had to, I had a lifetime of looking at the world through like this broken-hearted lens of just like a total almost like a self-loathing. And which is weird, Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing, but man, like self-loathing is like the worst type of loathing because it's like you just punish yourself for like consciousness. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at for the night. I think I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully someone will relate. We'll get there. It's just going to take as long as it takes, and if it comes down, it has to, right? Y'all take it easy.